Good morning.
Morning.
Tell me a little bit about Vice News, because this is sort of the big platform that you guys have just launched.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny. I think Vice News was something that we have felt very passionately about. Well, news as a topic is something that we felt very passionately about from the beginning of Vice, right? And since 2006, when we started making digital video, we felt like there was a real hole in the marketplace to be able to tell news stories through video in the voice of the millennial generation, right, our audience. We wondered why nobody was doing news, and the received logic was, or received knowledge was, that young people didn't care about the news. And we believed, based on conversations we had with our audience, with the kids that work for us, and I should say I use kids euphemistically to mean anyone younger than myself, but the kids in the office were obsessed by it, and in fact were more involved with news through Twitter and through social media than any of their previous generations. There wasn't a moment in their day when you viewed news. It was happening constantly, right?
Right.
So we said, well, obviously there's white space there. Obviously there's a place that we can get in and make a mark. We have a voice that's distinct in the marketplace, and we have a generation of people hungry for this stuff, so let's get out and do it. The success, though, has been surprising, I think, even to us. The news network was supposed to go live in April. By virtue of the fact that Simon Ostrovsky was on the ground in Crimea when the unrest broke out, we went live. We pushed live first because we thought that was a story that needed to be told, and we've kind of just gone strength to strength, and the viewers have come with us, right? I think if you look at pure numbers right now, Vice News is one of the largest news broadcasts in America, maybe in the world already, and we're 5 months old.
Can you talk to some of those numbers?
Well, I mean, our YouTube, we have 650 roughly thousand YouTube subscribers. We've got, I think, 70 million video views on news since launch as of yesterday. Or to double check on that number, but I believe that's the right number. Beyond that, we're just hearing anecdotally from people like, this is the news that I've been waiting for. This is the news that I'm,
So
anyway.
No, but I mean, one of the stats I'm trying to recall from one of my publishing engagements with a newspaper printer was something like, less than 20% of the millennial generation actually gets their news from anywhere else than their social graph, right? So how does social discovery, which based on what I'm hearing from you affirms that, how does the social discovery of your content affect your ability to build a business model around it, which is traditionally advertising?
Well, look, I mean, we've always felt like ultimately you have to produce content and put it in front of the audience where they want to consume it, right? Trying to funnel people to one place or another is an exercise in futility. So what we've instead tried to do is basically said, look, our content is going to be great no matter where you find it, and it's going to be supported by an entire ecosystem of additional content that you can find by going deeper into our owned and operated sites, or to our YouTube channels specifically, or even into our social feeds, right? What we say to brands as it relates to that is, look, come along and be next to the content, sponsor things that are close to your brand mission and close to your brand strategy, and your value will be conveyed and received by this audience, right? Who are much smarter than I think we tend to give them credit for, right? They see how brands are making content possible, and they appreciate the brands that do that, as long as it's not a misfit, as long as it doesn't smell like marketing.
So, okay, so I want to dovetail off that, because that was interesting. I think you guys, there's almost this sort of interesting paradox, right? Where because of the nature of the content that Vice has historically published, there's a lot of latitude and liberties there, right? You guys take big risks with content, right? But on the same token, the paradox is that I would suggest that for a marketer to want to play with you guys, that the sandbox is quite narrow and small. You sort of have, you have, to your point, if it looks like, smells like marketing, like not part of the equation. I mean, how do you manage those expectations, and what does that sandbox look like? What's that circle you draw around the space, the white space for a brand to participate with your storytelling?
Well, I mean, look, I think we basically, in daily conversation with our audience and with the people that work for us, we set out a list of stories, franchises, formats that we want to make Anyway, and then we have a division called Virtue within the company that comes from sort of agency-like rigor, looks at those franchises, those formats, those distributions, and goes, here are the sectors, here are the brands, here are the audiences that we can strategically align to that. They hand that stuff to my team, and then we go out to our agency partners and say, look, here are the opportunities we think make sense. That is complemented by the fact that we believe that brands need to think like media companies, in that they need to always be publishing, that they need to be in constant communication with their audiences, but they need to do so in the voice of the audience, not specifically adhering to a set of rules and regulations that's set out by some brand bible that is not consumer facing.
But where's the middle ground? Because I think, our, coming out of the world, when I was like on the agency side of the business, like the catchphrase was brand as a publisher. Mm-hmm. But I mean, let's be honest, like the conversation we were having on the last panel is that, well, it's really expensive to be a content creator. Sure. And the ROI is sort of, there's a lot of gray matter attached to that, right? Sure. So if at the end of the day, you're trying to drive a P&L, how do you help them take calculated risk? Because it seems to me like that's your biggest business challenge, is that it's got to be a calculated risk.
Sure. I mean, look, I think partially it's convincing them that the audience needs to, that they need to speak to the audience the way the audience speaks to one another, right? And the best way...
It's a great way to articulate it, by the way.
It's if that's not self-evident to everybody, like, I don't know, you should take a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, but we call it authenticity, right? But I think to make it more granular and specific.
Right, but it's not just authenticity. It's also vernacular. It's also tone. It's also the places that you deliver, and it's also the philosophy that somebody in the previous panel made this point. It's also the philosophy that every interaction with your brand has to add some degree of cultural capital to the audience's life, right? Like we frequently say the goal of, or what we want to do for our audience is give them the coolest story that they can tell at the bar, right? And we want to make them the most interesting person at the next conversation that they have, because they have this bit of cultural capital that they didn't have before. Brands can add that, have been adding that, are essential to their lives, but need to take that philosophy. Right?
So is there like when you come to the digital agency world, if you're building experiences for a brand, you have like a blacklist of words that you sort of you keep out. Do you have a blacklist of brands that you won't play with? Like,
no, I mean, look, we say in jest sometimes, oh, we wouldn't work with X or we wouldn't work with Y. The honest truth is, we assess with every brand partnership that we talk about, we assess whether or not this is a brand that's actually adding value to our audience's life. And the only places that we say no, this is just a non-starter, is with copycats, right? People that are following what is in the marketplace and not adding anything additional. With everybody else, whether that's a brand that's loved or whether that's a brand that's hated or whether that's a brand that's unknown to our audience, we go in and try to tackle it based on the merits of what they're adding, rather than the size of their budget or the received wisdom about whether the audience cares or not.
So I'm just curious, if you look at Vice and how it has evolved, coming from sort of a publication and a zine, right, to now we're sort of like going into this world of video, and then you've got the likes of Disney and sort of Time on the panel. How do you, as a media company, are you going to grow old with your millennial audience, or are you always going to stay in that 18 to 34-year-old sweet spot?
Well, I think, not to get grabby, but I think both, and the reason I say that is because what we have discovered over the course of the last 20 years is that our audience will age with us, right? I picked up Vice magazine the first time when I was 24. I was a marketing assistant at a record label. I picked it up in a skateboard shop. I now have a station wagon, 2 kids, a mortgage, and I'm still as involved in the content as ever. And obviously, I'm maybe a bad example because I work for the company, but we see that a lot from our audience. They age up with us. By the same token, as we've launched new verticals, as with Thump, our dance music channel, as with Fightland, our JV with UFC, we're able to onboard younger ends of the 18 to 34 demo, and I think we will continue to expand that vertical strategy, and we will continue to be able to bring in younger audiences, as well as through the success of stuff like HBO that has a naturally older audience, be able to bring people in from the other side. So obviously you can't always have your cake and eat it too, but we think that there's as long as we speak to those audiences in the voice they speak to each other, and again, getting back to that point, then we'll be able to stretch. Our expertise, though, and our tone is very much millennial.
Okay. Thanks, Ben.